The way things are, from a couple of years on, things are real horrible here in New York, all over.
You're dealing with a lot of people that are maniacs today.
You're dealing with an individual who's very basic, who only knows two things, rip off or be ripped off.
Many of those who make good by being bad are nowhere to be seen these days.
I'd be afraid. Of course I'd be afraid. He's a sick guy. He'd kill any time.
There isn't anything on earth that I will hide from or back up from.
People seem not to understand the close relationship between organized crime and street crime. And certainly in dealing with street crime in his area or any other kind of crime, the uniformed patrolman.
So all the lawyers that worked so hard in this case were on trial for 9 months. We're 3 weeks from an acquittal, all 10 defendants, and the government abandoned the case.
Presenzano, shot 4 times, his throat cut. Presenzano was allegedly connected.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of NYC Crime Spot. Right now we are in the old St. Raymond section of St. Raymond Cemetery, here in the Shirleyville section of the Bronx. New St. Raymond's is located in the Throgsneck section of the Bronx. That area developed in the 1950s. However, this area where we are now started its development in the 1840s. And we're going to be doing a little bit of a walk and talk around here, talking about today's story and some other things. Right now, we are in front of the Mausoleum of the man, the myth, the legend, Genovese crime family powerhouse, front boss, Anthony Fat Tony Salerno, a man who was sent away to spend the rest of his years in prison in the late 1980s before passing away in custody in 1992. But today's story deals with the criminal events that were transpiring here in February of 2013. When cemetery officials reported that at least 65 mausoleums here in St. Raymond's, mausoleums much like Anthony Salerno's, were being pillaged of their copper, their bronze, and other items of value. In February of 2013, they would make an arrest of one individual, and they would bring him to the 45th precinct, where he would be questioned about some of the defacing of these mausoleums that have been going on in recent weeks. And while Anthony Fat Tony Salerno's mausoleum was not damaged during this pillaging, we're going to tell you why it played an important role in the final admittance of guilt on the part of this individual that was apprehended by police in February of 2013. Next on NYC Crime Spot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, look how close these houses are to some of these stones. Wow. Thank you for sticking by. You have now entered the walk and talk portion of this upload. We are still here in beautiful St. Raymond Cemetery right here in the Bronx. Old St. Raymond Cemetery, as I went over before. This is the older section, developed in the 1840s. Now in the Throgsneck section of the Bronx, not far from here, is New St. Raymond's, developed in the 1950s. And we started in front of Anthony Fat Tony Salerno's mausoleum. Now there is some other organized crime individuals within St. Raymond's Cemetery. You have Vincent Mad Dog Cole. You have Giuseppe Joe the Baker Catania. Those are two that I found that were here. As far as some other ones, I'm sure there's plenty more. And there is also a lot of other famous people, famous for good things, let's say. We have the great jazz singer Billie Holiday, also interred here in St. Raymond's. You have former boxing champion Hector Macho Camacho, also interred here. Hector Camacho of Bayamon, Puerto Rico, the same area of Puerto Rico that my family is actually from. So shout out to Hector Macho Camacho, and a rest in peace to you, sir. We have some other notable historical figures buried here as well. Typhoid Mary Mallon, of course, who got the name Typhoid Mary, of course, because she had the typhoid fever. She was said to have infected dozens and dozens of people with this typhoid in the early 20th century, ultimately spending much of her life in quarantine on North Brother Island, a incredibly tragic tale. That's just a little background here on old St. Raymond's. Let's walk here. I think we have a beautiful monument over here. Wow, look at that. That is very nice. You can see a lot of the stones. And we're going to be walking down there and continuing on our rather bizarre story today. Let's get to today's story. So as I said in the beginning of this upload, our story today takes place in February of 2013. Now on February 17th of 2013, a security guard here at St. Raymond's would spot an individual who looked unkempt, homeless, potentially under the influence of drugs, and he was holding a solar-powered flower decoration which was seemingly taken from a gravesite. Security guard would ask the gentleman, "Excuse me, sir, what exactly are you doing here?" Gentleman would ignore him. Well, wouldn't you know it, the following day, on Sunday the 18th of February 2013, the gentleman will return once more. He would be spotted by security and asked, "Sir, you're here again. How can I help you?" The man would throw his bags to the floor and run off. Upon inspection of the bags, the security officer here at St. Raymond's would find hammers and other tools which could be used to cause damage to the cemetery. Furthermore, he would find pieces of bronze and copper, which seemed to have been taken off several of the mausoleums within this cemetery. He would call the police, and when they would arrive, he would show them what he found and supply them with a picture of the individual who ditched those bags there that day. Cops would poke around the neighborhood, around Throgs Neck, around the immediate area of the Bronx, asking people, "Hey, do you know this guy? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? We need to find this guy." Finally, they would find out exactly who he was. They would find out that he was a homeless, drug-addicted man named Lewis, who often hung around the area. Well, the next day, on the 19th of February, they had their man. They would spot Lewis at a pizzeria on East Tremont Avenue, and they would apprehend him and take him to the 45th precinct. So when they would take him to the precinct, he would finally be fully identified as 56-year-old Louis Peduto, a man who admitted to be addicted to drugs since he was the age of 13, a man who spent many years on the streets of New York City, wandering around, stealing, begging, and doing whatever he had to do to get by. They would question him about the bags he ditched here at St. Raymond's and ask him, why he was in possession of copper and bronze that belonged to the mausoleums here at the cemetery, and why he was in possession of numerous tools that would be used to pull off these items from the mausoleums. He would say, "That's not my bag, that's not me, I did not do it." He would continually deny that he was responsible for desecrating these mausoleums. However, that wouldn't last too long, because the detective squad commander working the case out of the 45th precinct would soon come up with a genius idea.
Mr. Peduto, listen. We know you're responsible for the thefts. We found numerous items in the bags you left behind. I think you'd be interested to know about one of the mausoleums you stole items from. You see, Mr. Peduto, you made a big mistake. One of those mausoleums belonged to none other than Anthony Fat Tony Salerno. You've been on the streets long enough. I'm sure you know who that is.
After being freaked out by the prospects of destroying Anthony Fat Tony Salerno's mausoleum here in St. Raymond's, Mr. Louis Peduto would admit to the police what he did. He knew the name, as any streetwise vagrant on the streets of New York City for many decades would. And the idea of street justice soon knocking on his door for what he did spooked him out. He would tell the officers that he was responsible for the items in the bag. However, as far as all the other thefts that were occurring in recent memory in the cemetery, he would say that he was not responsible for them. The New York Times would question him at Rikers Island, and he would say that over the past couple of weeks he stole items from the cemetery and made a couple of $100 scrapping them on the streets in New York City. However, he was not responsible for some of the heavy items that were reported to be missing, saying that, "What about those doors? They're 3, 4, 500 pounds, those doors. I can't possibly carry them." He would say, "I'm not Superman." And the newspapers that would pick this story up throughout the city weren't really kind to Mr. Louis Peduto, some referring to him as a cemetery ghoul. Now, Mr. Peduto, while what he was doing was pathetic, sad, and heinous, it would ultimately be taken into account that yes, while he did have a criminal record and he was a drug addict, he was not a felon, and he was in a situation where he was desperate and essentially resorted to what we're talking about today. But what would happen to Mr. Peduto because of this? Well, in March of 2013, in a Bronx criminal court, he would admit to what he did. He would plead guilty to grand larceny. However, the district attorney would actually consult with cemetery officials here in St. Raymond's, and they would ask the staff here, "Hey, what do you think we should do with this guy? You know, he seems to be out on, hard luck. He seems to be a mess. I mean, you think it's going to help him with all this guy in prison?" So they came up with an idea that might help Mr. Peduto. They came up with the idea to put him in a drug treatment facility for 1 to 2 years. And this was a residential facility where he would have to live, he'd have to get clean, and enter back into society. And if he broke that, then he would end up in prison, where some might believe he belonged. Little Rock of Ages. In the end, Mr. Peduto got off easy. It was his sad lifestyle and the idea that he had been a drug addicted for many decades and living on the streets with no hope and nowhere to go, resorting to acts such as we discussed, that kind of saved his ass. Seemingly the cemetery staff felt bad for him and other people within the court system. They didn't think a jail would do him any good. And to be honest with you, I kind of think some of that should happen a little more. Not to mention, he was not responsible for some of the major things that were going on here in St. Raymond's, as far as extremely heavy items that were taken off mausoleums. He was just a vagrant opportunist trying to take advantage of a situation. And the police, that one detective with his master level of trickery, used Fat Tony Salerno's mausoleum as a trick to get Mr. Louis Peduto to admit to what he did. Genius. Absolutely genius. I don't know if it's, was that legal to do? I mean, I don't know. You guys tell me. Is it okay to make shit up? I guess. I don't know. I guess nobody was pressing the matter, considering what was being done. So we are back heading this way, still in St. Raymond's. As you can see, this is kind of where we started before. So I just wanted to come here and tell that little story. I was going to do this as a full narration, with images and video and stuff, but I figured, you know what? I don't live too far from here, so let's do a little walk and talk. Check it out. Maybe you guys will enjoy it. Enjoy the visuals. And if you know me, guys, listen, we're walking. A part of these videos is, yes, I want to tell you a story in a loose kind of way, like we're hanging out, right? 2, I want to show you the visuals. I want to show you what these places look like. That is as much a part of these things as the words that are coming out of my mouth. Many of you understand that. Some of you don't understand that, but that's okay. Not everybody's content is for everybody. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this upload. I hope you enjoyed this little story. I hesitate to say it's a cute story. It's not cute, but there's something innocent about it. There's something, I guess maybe because what the police officer did. I don't know. There's just something about it. Anyways, I hope you all have a beautiful week. I hope you enjoyed this little visit to St. Raymond's Cemetery. I hope you enjoyed this story. And I will see you all on the YouTube.
The way things are, from a couple of years on, things are real horrible here in New York, all over.
You're dealing with a lot of people that are maniacs today.
We're dealing with an individual who's very basic, who only knows 2 things, rip off or be ripped off.
Many of those who make good by being bad are nowhere to be seen these days.
I'd be afraid. Of course I'd be afraid. He's a sick guy. He'd kill anytime.
There isn't anything on earth that I will hide from or back up from.
People seem not to understand the close relationship between organized crime and street crime. And certainly in dealing with street crime in his area or any other kind of crime, the uniformed patrolman.
So all the lawyers that worked so hard in this case were on trial for 9 months, with 3 weeks from an acquittal, all 10 defendants, and the government abandoned the case.
Provenzano shot 4 times, his throat cut. Provenzano was allegedly connected.